After almost 60 years of strong bipartisan support, Congress has cut all federal funding for public media, stripping away a critical pillar of support for local stations like ours. At Vermont Public, we'll lose at least $2 million this year. If all our sustaining members increase their gift by $7 per month, we'll close that gap for good. Increase your gift today and help close the gap at vermontpublic.org/update.
From Vermont Public, this is The Frequency. I'm Mitch Wertlieb. It's Monday, September 29th, and here are today's headlines. Solar panel installers are rushing to finish jobs by the end of the year. That's because a federal income tax credit for solar projects ends on December 31st. Jared Cobb is the general manager of Catamount Solar. It's a solar installation company based in Randolph. Cobb recently told Vermont Edition the company's schedule was full going into the summer. Then President Trump signed the federal spending bill that eliminates the 30% tax credit.
The phones were just ringing nonstop. So we're booking into next year, but it's definitely a different conversation with customers who don't have the access to the investment tax credit.
The federal government also canceled more than $60 million that was meant to help low-income Vermonters buy solar panels. The Vermont Attorney General's office is celebrating a court order that protects billions of dollars in federal funding for projects ranging from emergency management preparedness to preventing and addressing terrorism, mass shootings, and cybersecurity threats. A Rhode Island federal judge late last week agreed with Vermont and 20 other states' attorneys general that the Department of Homeland Security and FEMA violated the Constitution and the Administrative Procedure Act when they made the federal funds available only if states agreed to help enforce federal immigration law. In a press release, Vermont Attorney General Charity Clark called the ruling, quote, an important victory. You may have heard of bars that have pub hoppings or wineries that offer tasting tours. Now in Vermont, you can take part in a cannabis crawl. That's thanks to a new initiative that encourages people to visit cannabis dispensaries across the state. The Cannabis Retailers Association of Vermont recently launched the CannaTrail Passport. It's inspired by beer and wine trails. Association Board Chair Scott Sparks says CannaTrail participants can visit and collect stickers at 23 participating dispensaries across Vermont for prizes.
We thought it would be good to engage both locals and tourists and get them to travel around the state and support the cannabis community as a whole, just in a fun way.
No purchase is necessary to pick up a passport or get one stamped at any of the participating dispensaries, but you do have to be at least 21 years old. The passport features shops as far north as Barton and as far south as Brattleboro. And a Vermont State Trooper is okay, but their squad car is not, after their vehicle collided with a bear. It happened in the rainy, early morning hours in Washington County last Thursday. Vermont State Police say the trooper was not injured in the single-vehicle crash in Middlesex. The officer was traveling north on I-89 when the bear emerged from the center median right into the vehicle's path. The crash resulted in moderate front-end damage to the trooper's squad car. No word on what happened to the bear. And coming up, more than 60,000 Vermonters depend on a federal supplemental nutrition program known as SNAP. But the Trump administration is marking the program for big cuts, and changes are expected as early as this week. Vermont Public's Peter Hirschfeld explains how this could affect some of the state's most vulnerable people. That's after this.
Thanks for listening to The Frequency, where support comes from SRH Law, believing that values and mission still matter. When you need good counsel for your values-based work, whether it's securing our energy future, building affordable and sustainable communities, or advancing a values-led economy, they're here to help you make a difference. SRHLaw.com. Making a difference is our practice.
Federal legislation signed by President Trump is expected to reduce funding for the country's top nutrition assistance program by 20% over the next decade. And some of the biggest changes to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, known as SNAP, will start to take effect this week. So what does that mean for the 65,000 Vermonters who rely on SNAP benefits? Vermont Public's Peter Hirschfeld put that question to state officials and food security advocates. And he recently sat down with Vermont Public host Mary Angus to talk about what he learned.
First question, actually two questions rolled into one. First, what's happening this week? And then what are the implications for the low-income Vermonters that currently receive these benefits?
You mentioned this new federal law that the Congressional Budget Office says will reduce SNAP funding by 20% over the next 10 years. Well, one of the primary ways it achieves those spending cuts is by instituting new work requirements on a wide range of SNAP beneficiaries. And those work requirements take effect on Wednesday. The requirements apply to veterans, to unhoused people, to parents with children that are older than 14 years old, and also to older Vermonters. And there are thousands of residents who are currently receiving federal nutrition assistance benefits who will no longer be eligible for SNAP if they can't demonstrate that they're in compliance with these work requirements.
Do we know yet how many Vermonters are going to lose benefits as a result of these changes?
We do not, and it's going to be months before we do. The reason for that is that the state has a plan that will provide a temporary reprieve to any SNAP beneficiary who would otherwise be tossed from the rolls as a result of not being able to meet the work requirements, and that reprieve lasts until February. The hope, Mary, is that this will either give people time to find a work arrangement that will allow them to fulfill the requirement, or give some time to folks who can't meet that requirement to see if there are other exemptions they might qualify for that would keep them eligible for SNAP benefits. Keep in mind, we're talking about thousands of people here, many of whom aren't even aware that these changes are taking effect. And food security experts and state officials say it's going to require a pretty massive outreach campaign to make sure that these folks know what's coming and then to help them plan accordingly.
Yeah, what is that outreach campaign going to look like, and who's spearheading that effort?
The Department for Children and Families is going to be playing a big role, obviously. They've been sending out notices to affected households and encouraging them to contact the state so that DCF can do some one-on-one case management. And nonprofits are also gearing up to make sure that this transition period results in as few people as possible losing SNAP benefits. Nora Horton, who is the executive director at Hunger Free Vermont, told me that for people who can't meet these work requirements, there are likely other exemption criteria they could apply for. And she says if Vermont does this right, then the state could drastically minimize the number of people who will end up losing their food benefits.
For those Vermonters who aren't able to stay on the SNAP rolls, what's the plan there?
And that is an inevitability, Mary. We know, for instance, that refugees and asylees and other non-citizens who are in the country legally will no longer qualify for SNAP no matter what they do as a result of this federal law. And those people who lose benefits are in most cases going to have to rely on the network of charitable food distribution systems that exist at the local level. Advocates are worried about the strain that this new demand is going to put on those systems, and they are going to be asking the legislature and the governor to increase state funding for nutrition assistance to make sure the system can handle these new pressures.
That's Vermont Public's Peter Hirschfeld. Find and read his full story at vermontpublic.org. Thanks, Pete.
Thank you, Mary.
Thanks for listening to The Frequency today. We had additional reporting from Michaela Lafrac, Jen Jarecki, Nathaniel Wilson, and Mary English. Today's episode was edited by Stephanie Colombini, and our music is by Blue Dot Sessions. I'm Mitch Wertlieb. I'll talk to you tomorrow.